Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you will never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, so day 16 just wrapped up. Mr. Madden took the stand today. He was the only witness to be cross-examined. They started off with some housekeeping, saying that there was some additional disclosure documents that would be presented near the end of the day. Then they swore Mr. Madden in. He took the stand looking like a deer in the headlights. He really looked quite nervous right from the very beginning. So COPA's lawyers, they asked him a few questions to start off. They really just asked him to verify that the documents and the witness statements submitted to the court with his name on it were his, and that he had actually completed those reports and made those statements. Then they handed it off to Craig's lawyers, and Craig's lawyers just tore this guy apart the whole day. They pretty much forced him to admit that all of the claims Craig had made about his report were either entirely true or they were mostly true, but he had some slight disagreement with, like, the interpretation of them. And really, there was a very clear theme for the way that the Madden report was done. The theme in his report is that he found something that could potentially be an indication of a forgery, but had alternative possibilities for how that could have been created. So things like anomalous timestamps or metadata. He would pretty much say that he found this anomalous timestamp or this anomalous metadata, and from that concluded, or jumped to the conclusion rather, that it indicated a forgery. But at the same time, when he was pressed about each of these, he had to admit that there was an alternative explanation for how those things could exist that didn't rely on forging the document. So really, he backed up everything that Craig said on the stand, and there were only very few things where he even had any disagreement with what Craig had said. He's like, yeah, I guess it's possible, but I assumed that it was done differently and that it's a forgery. Like, it was like he was just jumping to conclusions in this report that he did. And there were certain things where he said that he'd done extra checks, but he didn't submit the checks that he had done to the court. And it's just, that doesn't make sense. If you're doing this report, you're doing this forensic investigation into these documents, and you do these checks, why wouldn't you submit them to the court? He said it was too voluminous if he would have submitted everything. And then he was asked about whether or not he had an office at Bird and Bird, and he initially said that he didn't. But then he said that there was like a temporary office they gave him where he would like have occasional meetings with him, and that COPA's lawyers, their solicitors, were helping him draft his report or like form and finesse his report. So this guy threw his own independence out the window on the stand. He pretty much said that when this actually came about, when they were asking him about why so little was done in his report or why he didn't check all these different things, and he pretty much said that he didn't have enough time because of the amount of work he had to do and the timeline that he had to do it. So then they asked him why he didn't take on an assistant, and he said he gave really bad excuses for why he didn't want to take on an assistant, saying that he would have to supervise them because he couldn't find anyone who was like worked the way he liked to work, so that if he had to take someone who didn't work the way that he liked to work, he would have to go over their work and look over their shoulder, and that he didn't like to work that way. But then he's saying that instead of doing it with a technical expert, someone closer to his level, that he was choosing to do it with lawyers instead, who have no technical understanding of the material. And they're drafting it specifically with the intention of their case. You can't do that as an expert. As an independent expert, go to the lawyers for the plaintiffs, and or rather, yeah, you can't go to the plaintiff's lawyers and ask them to help you create the report, the independent report for their case. It was an unmitigated disaster for Patrick Madden today. There was very few points where he redeemed himself even a little bit. I mean, it was everything. He was talking about all the... He was blaming clock manipulation for metadata, and then admitting that the metadata could have been created through some other method. And then he was saying that he's not a LaTeX expert, but then he insisted that the ODT file must have been created from OpenOffice, even though he literally 60 to 90 seconds before that, said that he had no idea how LaTeX could be used to pretty much draft documents that looked like they were open in OpenOffice because he had no experience with LaTeX whatsoever. So you just admitted that you have no knowledge of how this could be done whatsoever, but you're certain that that wasn't how it's done? This guy's entire testimony was contradicting itself. It was contradicting his report. He said that he had done all these checks and then not submitted them. This guy just threw any credibility that he had out the window. I don't know how anyone could interpret this any other way. I'd love to see how the BTC people are interpreting this, because I don't think anyone could possibly interpret what happened to this guy on the stand today as a win if you're in the BTC camp. Yeah, it was just bad. He didn't do any Citrix checking. He said that he had no training or qualifications to analyze PGP keys. There's a lot of stuff that he said flat out he was analyzing that he's not even qualified to analyze. Today was a huge win for Craig. It was a huge win for Craig. I honestly couldn't foresee a cross-examination that could have gone better than this went for Craig's team. At the end of the day, this guy's credibility is absolutely destroyed. His credibility as an independent expert was destroyed. You could see the relief on his face when it was done. He was just like, oh God, get me out of this place. It was bad. But then it got worse, because pretty much right after he left the stand, they were going to bring in Craig's witness, but then they decided not to. And they presented that they had this new disclosure document, these new disclosure documents to bring before the court. So when Craig was on the stand previously, he stated that he'd sent Antier a email with his login information for the MYOB portal, but they stated, or he said that he sent that in December 2019 to them. They said that he didn't send it to them until March. And they produced an email chain showing that he didn't contact them until March. So this was something that when Craig gave his testimony about this on the stand, COPA's lawyers accused him of lying relentlessly and grilled him on this fact. You must be lying. The email wasn't sent in December 2019, like you said. It was sent in March 2020, and you're being dishonest. You're just making it up as you go, aren't you, Mr. Wright, or Dr. Wright? And lo and behold, there's this other email chain from Ramona showing that it was sent in December. So one of these sets of emails is a fake. And I very much doubt that Craig's lawyers presented what they would believe is a fake series of emails from their client to the courts. So it seems pretty likely that if Craig's team is bringing this new disclosure to the courts, that they're the one with the authentic emails. So it seems like either Antier or Bird or maybe some third party that intercepted these messages or manipulated somewhere where these emails were stored. I don't know, hacked an email server or something to modify them. But it looks very clearly like either Antier or COPA's lawyers, or some other third party potentially, manipulated the emails that they submitted to the courts. This is going to be a big deal, because if it is revealed that COPA is submitting forged documents to prove their case, well, who's got forged ink on their face at that point, right? That's going to have to be hashed out. But there was a really interesting bombshell to drop at the end of the day, I thought. It's like, hey, those emails that you said Craig was lying about, yeah, we have another set of those emails, and it looks like the ones you had were fake. So now it's just a matter of which one's actually fake and who faked it, and whether or not there's any evidence trail to indicate who that might be. But it's something that I'm sure the courts are going to discuss in the next week or so, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a great day for Craig. It was a great day for anyone who wants to see Craig win this case, I think. Yeah, it was just bad. Even the things that when he was saying that he allowed Bird and Bird to help him create this report, they asked him if he'd ever done that in any other case, anything like that before, and he pretty much said no. That he would never allow lawyers to help him draft his reports prior to them being submitted to the courts in any other case before. I'm really excited to see what happens tomorrow, because yeah, I think if anyone who watched today, watched the live stream, watched everything that happened, saw his face while he was speaking, they've got a lot more confidence in Craig now. And I feel like any BTC people who watched today are wondering if the Madden report is something like the Steele dossier. I said that early on. I thought when Craig was explaining his grievances with the Madden report, that the Madden report seemed to be like a big nothing burger. Like the conclusions drawn in the Madden report didn't have proper testing or premises to base those conclusions on. And he pretty much validated that assumption. So, horrible day for Mr. Madden, great day for Dr. Wright. Like, share, and subscribe.